about it for our opening talk, and I would like to ask Rinpoche to please join us. Tajdelek Rinpoche, welcome. Thank you so much for accepting Dharma Friends of Israel request and kindly offer this precious teaching. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you. Shalom.
Shalom. We will now start with the prayer of taking refuge and generation of bodhicitta with Venerable Carlson, please.
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. For the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. For the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. But the merits I create through listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Yeah, and then Israel Dharma friend Chozogi Koti Thone Luatan Langi Tuzuchi Dane Koti Chevawas and then the Lagalengi Chi Lejeva Tomare and lots of again Yaki Kamutsundu Chanare and the Gishema Gasan Omore and Chejanre and the Tonachi Samalolia. Tanangya Samdish Residili Shui and Lottery go to the ins.
So Rinpoche said that, well, today these teachings were organized by the Dharma Friends of Israel. And so it's in particular, it's a question and answer session for about an hour. Rinpoche will answer questions. And Rinpoche would like to thank all the organizers, the translators like Venerable Gatsun, Sheshi, and Kelsang Momo. Rinpoche would like to thank everyone who's involved in making this event possible. So Venerable Gatsun will translate into Hebrew, Sheshi into Russian, Kelsang Momo into English. And so now the questions will be asked and Rinpoche will start to answer.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So now, if it's okay by you, we'll start with the questions.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll switch to Hebrew, and everybody is welcome to choose their preferred language channel at the globe icon at the Zoom toolbar. אז השאלות לג'אדו רינפוצ'ה מחולקות לפי נושאים, ואנחנו נתחיל בשאלות בנוגע לדרמה בחיי היום-יום, והתמודדות עם מצבים קשים ורגשות עוכרים. השאלה הראשונה היא של חגית, והיא מורכבת מכמה שאלות שעוסקות במצב כרגע במדינת ישראל. הניסיון להפיכה משטרית באמצעות חקיקה של הקואליציה שכנגדו יוצאים רבים להפגנות, ואז היא שואלת איך אנרגיה והתכוונות קבוצתית יכולה להשפיע בעולם התופעות, לדוגמה התנגדות הלא אלימה.
So I start to translate the question. I guess that's because I can't hear Hebrew, so I don't know what he's saying, but I'll just read the question. The first question is, the political situation in Israel is difficult at the moment. The government is trying to change the system of government from a democracy to a dictatorship. This creates fear and division among the people who have been demonstrating for weeks. As Dharma practitioners, can we use our practice to bring about change in Israel, to bring about harmony among people? The situation seems too serious for individuals to have any influence. So how can we somehow make a difference? How can our actions affect the situation from a spiritual perspective?
Chi mambo chi ngogo chigiore, ta tensan mi singular, ngamta chigiore, semtre chigiore, tsani ne dewo yomare. Yan dila tene yan mi mitumba shivochi chason. Ane kawa
I'll
don.
read it again. The political situation in Israel is difficult at the moment. The government is trying to change the system of government from a democracy to a dictatorship. This creates fear and division among the people who have been demonstrating for weeks. As Dharma practitioners, can we use our practice to bring about change in Israel, to bring about harmony among people? The situation seems too serious for individuals to have any influence. So can we somehow make a difference? How can our actions affect the situation from a spiritual perspective?
탑시 강용용 쳐야지. 라나 겔 때니네 야 개첨보래. 간데 심규 추바이나 경 라니리 요래 강에 지테그래. 돈다 두야라야 지 심규 추바티기 셰단티기 니루 양다와 방어트 쳐야다. 세셰 쳐야다. 하고야라야 그 가기래 식주고 쇼두그래. 어딘데 임베 차네 가세 투두기 최기 차네 이나래 직된게 차네 이나래 심규 맞추고 털이야 간 투두 배전지 제배 터네 다 스스 삼내나를 여대바디 땐데 덴바야 이스게 덴바스나래 마노와야 이스게 노와야 이스게 간다르 스스 가리 있는 스스 뇌는 파산 남다기 터네 에는 레셰 강야야다 그 딘데지기 지조라 에는 지다 참도 용야다 지조 고도 야고 용야 지조 되기 용야 단다라 엔 같이 투두 바세셰 제제 도스 제바이나 에는 미망고지기 그 계제들 구주도가 그 계제들이야 땐데 삼다야 두고 하사지기 망소래 이내야 지 고도 배야래 삼노코야라 에는 차겐두야라 펜도 요데야 레기 네모토발라 두조이나야 망소나네 삼자 딘리지도 딜라 구주텐덴도 만지디 교웨스타나 야서르세 딘데기 심불레야라야 펜도 요데 딘디지 레sam도 디마도 지지니제 나슈스케도.
So Rinpoche's response to this question is, well, he says that I don't have much to say about this particular situation, but what I would like to say is that it's most important for everyone involved not to get too upset, in the sense that our mind shouldn't be disrupted too much by getting upset, by getting confused about the situation and so forth. So it's extremely important to pay attention to our own mind, not to get too angry, not to get to develop aversion and so forth. This we need to look out for, and then try to do our best, to give our best to solve the situation. So for instance, also it's important not to apply harsh speech. And whether we talk about this from the point of view of the Dharma, or whether we talk about this from the point of view of just the world, of worldly activities, it is important to do something in such a situation as right now, in the situation Israel is in right now. But we have to make an effort. We have to make an effort and act accordingly without getting upset. And it may be possible that we make mistakes when we act, when we do something, when we try to bring about change. It may be the case that we don't make any mistakes. So anything is possible. But most important is our motivation, the motivation of wanting to benefit others, to have a pure motivation to act for the welfare of others. And then explain as well as possible what we're thinking, what the situation is, make it clear to others, with the goal of harmony in society, to bring about a harmonious society, a happy society, a society where everyone is or to the best of one's ability, is feeling well, is satisfied with the situation. So we should give our best to bring this about or to work towards this. And in that way, we may have to speak out. We have to share our opinion, motivated by the wish to benefit others, and then apply all the means that we have access to. So speak out, can share our opinion, and in that way, well, not only does it help the situation, possibly may help the situation, but it may also help democracy in general. I mean, the system, it supports the system of democracy. So the support by way of supporting democracy, by way of speaking out against dictatorship, etc. And in that way, it'll help the country. It'll help also, well, possibly in the sense of the politicians hearing what we've got to say, hearing what other people have to say, and it may actually change their mind. It may affect their way of thinking, so that eventually they're willing to make adjustments and continue on with the democratic kind of system. So this is therefore, Rinpoche says he doesn't have that much to say about the political situation and so forth, but that would be his advice in this situation. So I guess that's the second question now. The question is, how do we forgive the unforgivable? If people close to us, our parents, relatives, and so on, have wronged us badly, how can we forgive them? I try to cultivate compassion for them, but after 17 years, I still feel threatened by them. I'm not trying to restore our relationship. I just want to move on. I'll read it again. How do we forgive the unforgivable? If people close to us, our parents, relatives, and so on, have wronged us badly, how can we forgive them? I try to cultivate compassion for them, but after 17 years, I still feel threatened by them. I'm not trying to restore our relationship. I just want to move on.
재산 konto di netsu di tola kuyambo kandechi chena lo tana kandechi chena Rinpoche di la kalopchi nantubainas.
Inde kange yongdewe kadu tela lamsa kuyambo chewore se chigo ki kendang tab miduwas. Da kuyambo che gowe ki ta tabshi naga nisum katse yebechi. So it's that Duguma which Yan Devati and then Chungchava res. Tako Yang your chamber in a ko the Tema Casa Martin Kapu Pegi Yugimarity, Titol Yango, you send those check to do it in the chest, to do it in the chest, Yango chamber in Maki do Saru Doyachi. 로단디 지당 내단지스 근데 인도 디지시디 양교 돼야지 톨이야 스스 배저디 맞아야지 답시 답지 디기 두야기 답시 당고들레스 따때네 오래 알랭이 디지키나 주로나
맞어.
So Rinpoche will answer this question in different parts. So he describes different methods. So here, just now, Rinpoche described the first method. He said, well, just to move on, I mean, just to relax and take it easy in such a situation, that itself won't help. So rather, it's important to make an effort to find a solution in such a situation. So, of course, to also be aware that what has happened has happened. We can't change the past. The situation that happened, the kind of unforgivable situation, as she describes it, well, it has happened and cannot be undone. And of course, it's impossible to stop us from remembering it. It's impossible to just stop our mind from remembering what has happened. However, we should make an extra effort not to obsess about it, to think about it over and over and over again, to reflect on it, what has happened, and to kind of repeatedly obsess about it in the sense of kind of going through it again and again. So in that sense, we should make an effort, therefore, to, yes, remember it, but control our mind to such a degree that this continuous reflection on it, that is reduced. That is the first method, in which is the rest will follow.
and so tebe minga imbala cha shaba ina and ta hamada punya to chang malo in bed machamba che ti du shada tanje ti duge mindues pamani de pazu dubuta punya shenda do ti dubuta ganga dubutanje o dosti dues and konzo koranzo pazu dubu mede bitila ngalya dubu shuji tang de saji noya ti 체계 견자지 야자로 집에 양면 야장업 주타버래 양면은 야자 니시잖아 쓰는 이제 디그리 때스 마 밥에 설 체제 노주지 차대 소설 예배 다지르스 군소 강가로 마참 지지도 땅민도 왔어 소설 아니를 도지 쇼 땅중 산에 인구도 왔어 텐더를 두고 용루 용다데 진짜 때벽거는 중화다 디 경기 차지 다시 소설아니라야 예대지 소설아니를 이어버데 뜻이 뭔지 맞도봐 그 경강가 밀레 심 주고 파주고 뭐도 소설이야 아니 뭔지 맞도야 근데지 요래 디양 소스 시버투나 야고요스 내드게서 세부 중송 가잖아 이게서 세부 중송 권한저 민나 남이 분제 시응하여는 시부대 배 누구다를 제 대금이도 왔으면 소스티월 누구 지금도 대 가르쳐냈어 견직 소설 이해가 네 어떻게
that's all as me
and so with regard to the first method, Rinpoche also added, well, if we think about a situation, if we've been wronged in the past and we reflect on this over and over again, well, it'll actually harm us, or it can potentially harm us in such a way that in the end we're so desperate that we may even jump from a high building or jump from somewhere and kill ourselves, because we're so desperate, because we can't see anything else anymore and are therefore not able to deal with the situation. So there's definitely great danger of going over something again and again and not being able to let go of that. But secondly, something else, another aspect or something else was the second aspect, like what we should consider is to understand that every situation that arises, every event that arises has many causes and conditions that created the situation. Now, for instance, the way it was described in the question, well, it seems, well, one's parents and one's siblings. So let's say it's your parents, your father and your mother and your siblings. So let's say 5 people were involved in in kind of treating you in an unacceptable way and harming you, as an example. So these 5 people who harmed you possibly get along really well. I mean, maybe they don't get along with each other, but maybe they don't have a problem with one another. And so whatever happened, it's directed at you. So if that is the situation, well, it's important to consider that it's not always just one person's fault. We have a sense that it's a particular person's fault, it's this person's fault, and so forth. But I don't know, Rinpoche says he doesn't know how many, like the percentage, if you were to calculate it in percentages, like, well, is it 50% or 25%? Also come from us. We have also contributed to the situation. We have possibly done something. We've made mistakes in the past, and they have also contributed to such an event, to such a situation. And it's important, therefore, to also reflect on that we have made mistakes and not just focus on what other people have done wrong. I mean, maybe they get along really well, these 5 people. Rinpoche repeated it with in the case of the example, so maybe the parents or the siblings and so forth, they all got together to harm this particular person. And if they all get if they all get along with each other well, then that pretty much shows that there's also a mistake from your side. And then so it's important to always consider the entire causes and conditions that have given rise to the situation.
단다 가제 메스나 팡당지 여데바다 지조기를 라니 드야 여데바티 간제친 살론 총벌 간제치기 나네 아니 차진 라브레 셰베이나 파마다 분야티기 kuyu tiki ne ambu ame kobenar dawagu hasiti de tene shine omatu tene chalo che tene laptachi o tu chene chungbachiru bas tinde indu katui na kunzongala tubu tanjung sambatigi työnshada samno tambatigi ani mone tane pendo chebe kadin tigi changmalo be musi matu cheje edi tindichi 다 차대기 여러봤어. 등 모두 제베이나 편도 집이 참 망고지 단당에 배전시에 딜레스. 딘데지기 돈에 대한 데마르 당원에레 하면 진을 때 남이 난산 디기 진을 때 마두스체 미치조나 두스체레 도지 딘데 충벌을 와 딘데지 삼는다마인 디스 하만이야 다 녀르도야 당 구셔 야르도야 당 삼다 녀르도야 군야레 두스체지 대주직이 요야기 라이어스티 다가스 몽데 계속 말이 유천양다 딩에 유천 숨바인스 근데 유천 시바데네 저라고 준주 시오진의 레민도 와스 근데 임베차네 안다 뭐네 타네기 말이야 근데 강에 나라쪽을 용대야지 남바지긴 뭐는 상담바이 유치다 깨질 때는 충분치를 다기 먼저 sem전라 딘다와에 네바체 대제 sem전 다기 달은 네바 딘중 리스는 존중나로 숨반나시 겨우만 넣어서 네 sem전 셔는 네바체베기 남에게 누구들 말 딘디 충분 임바르다 당연 딘디 짠 지금에도 와 삼바지 딜랍잘 렌제 벤투스첸 벤 제리아 지 같이 두두 소스 셈비 리기도야 돌이
Now, as to the third method, with regard to the third method, well, let's say it was your parents harmed you, who've wronged you badly, as it was described in the question. So, well, if you focus on your mother, for instance, well, your mother has given birth to you, has done so much for you. I mean, if you just think about it, we were born with nothing. And so our parents, our mother provided us with whatever we needed to stay alive. She took care of us. She carried us for 9 months in her womb, in her body. And then fed us with her own milk, milk produced by her body. She raised us, gave us whatever we needed, sent us to school and so forth. And in that way, we need to focus on all the benefit we received. We need to focus on the benefit we received, in this case from our mother, but possibly also from our siblings, from our father, of course. So the benefit we receive from our parents, our siblings, and so forth. So right now, we are mainly focusing on the harm. We're not able to see anything else. But it's important to also consider the positive aspects, to see the entire situation. So not to just focus on one part, but to see the whole picture. And they've definitely benefited us in the past. So here the person asking about the parents, or our parents have definitely benefited us in the past. They've shown us a lot of kindness. And so it's important to remember that. It's important to remember all the kindness received from them. This will, first of all, give rise to a feeling of closeness, to feel closer to them, to just that distance, kind of that gap is shortened. The gap, this feeling of a gap of a distance is lessened. And, well, not just with our parents, but also with our siblings. And maybe even the sense of, well, I want to respect my parents may actually arise. So in that way, Rinpoche says that we really focus on the whole situation of all the benefit we receive from them. There's definitely some hope that we can let go of the harm or the wrong that has been done to us, and move on in such a way. And maybe it will even repair our relationship. But as a fourth method, Rinpoche says also, well, you're not a child, so therefore you know about causes and conditions. You know that, well, in this life, of course, many causes and conditions give rise to any kind of situation. But even more than that, if we also consider past lives and karmic actions. So, for instance, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, or the Bodhicayatara by Shantideva talks about it in one verse, basically saying, well, due to all the actions I've accumulated in the past, all the harmful actions that I've accumulated in the past, having harmed others, I therefore also receive the harm from others, which is why I will make an effort to restrain myself, to avoid any kind of harmful actions. And this is what we should also consider in such a situation, to understand that of many causes and conditions that have come together in this situation where you were harmed by your parents and so forth. Well, there are causes and conditions of the past, karmic actions accumulated in the past, and therefore it's important now to not accumulate these kind of actions again, to refrain from these kind of harmful actions in order to create the causes for well-being, create the causes for happiness. And so Rinpoche said this is all he's got to say about this situation. This is basically the fourth method, or the fourth way to deal with this situation, and there's really not much more he's got to say about it.
שנטידבה לדוגמה, דיבר על זה במדריך לנוהג הבודיסטווה. הוא אמר שבאחד הבתים כל הרע או כל הפגיעה שפגעתי באחרים בחיים קודמים, מתבטאים בחיים האלה בצורות שונות, במצבי פגיעה שונים. אז מה שקרה, אז אנחנו חושבים על מה שקרה בעבר, ואנחנו גם חושבים, מאחר ואני לא רוצה לחוות פגיעה בחיים האלה וההלך, אני צריך להיזהר מלפגוע באחרים. אני צריך להימנע מפגיעה באחרים. נסו לרינפוצ'ה.
Thank you, Rinpoche. השאלה הבאה היא שאלה של דלית. מהם השלבים המדויקים בהם יש...
The third question is, how do we deal with a personal tragedy, an accident, abuse, loss of a child, being boycotted, and so on? As Buddhist practitioners, we can understand that the damage has already been done, that the past cannot be changed, that the event is empty of intrinsic existence, and so on. And yet, the terrible experience is still painfully present. Perhaps this is similar to a post-traumatic event, and even some Buddhist practitioners can experience this after years of practice and still be bitter, resentful, and so on. It seems that meditating on compassion and applying antidotes does not completely remove the pain. Could Rinpoche give us some advice on how to think and evaluate such a situation? So I'll just read it again. How do we deal with the personal tragedy, an accident, abuse, loss of a child, being boycotted, and so on? As Buddhist practitioners, we can understand that the damage has already been done, that the past cannot be changed, that the event is empty of intrinsic existence, and so on. And yet the terrible experience is still painfully present. Perhaps this is similar to a post-traumatic event, and even some Buddhist practitioners can experience this after years of practice and still be bitter, resentful, and so on. It seems that meditating on compassion and applying antidotes does not completely remove the pain. Would Rinpoche give us some advice on how to think and evaluate such a situation?
Di nezu di la dende lenge mixe mena so shen la noba matangwa ina ya nezu den dawachi jungire di la kalopchi nantuwa inas.
Tati tagi riwa nyiba tida dawara ji mariwe.
Naola.
Riwa nyiba dawara ji resha. Riwa nyiba teli ya nge kasa riwa sumba tida dawara ji resha. Ta ko tenzen sumre ji dawsha yubas. Ta tinande keja talen sarwa karidu sena chamba gom nyingje gom ane tongwa nyige tawa ten ti kolya samtana ane dur sa chi sa ti ta nenga chi re o ta ngone chamba gom nyingje gomba ne du chimba ta tongba nyi gomba ne du sonyon dur do shinge mare ta ti chamba ta nyingje gomba ne du masong ta chi ta tongni gomba ne du masong ta chi ten den re ta chamba gomba nyingje gomba sengen di ne du rothak gutolya ene namyu ran jinjing gi gothman samba shen jinjing gi yende gothman samba sa ji tanda chunju gi lu gebe na ne sungde ya di ta ti ko te nyer gyusen ti changwa chunju na ne khar sungu du shen jinjing gi yende gothman samba ya gombino khar du zo kanga to 심바체 아니 디데 계제 두서 참아 뎀베 차 두게 민두게 계제 두서 유첸 두게 민두게 두서 강가 두스체 수수 루유리야 추바치체 아니 신에 아니 당문에 신진지 생인데 대충무지 레드도 와 삼바치기 근데 삼노치 전부 레소나 아니 신에 아니 단다 두고다냐이나 강에 주무도서 아니 신의 처전을 샤미 아니 다기 디르버디 파감나 데스팸비 차 용물을 당원에 두고 양바다 강에 중바다 디 처전을 샤니 아니 진진고 신진진 공부요 슬라바이나 람사다다 고파도 말했음 그도스 같이 단된 갑도 내게자이 녜나 아니 란진진이 교 고투만에 삼바다 셴진진이 연데 고투만에 삼바스게 벤나 준주나가 딘데 숨고도 와 디르바 갈사 가데 다다 셴이가 둥에 민데 충발라 달라 하와지에나 디질 다직 대화전스 둥에 민데 왜 지기야 이모질 소소 치고 아니 둥에 민데베 돌 삼담ati 아니 하르레슬라비나 팅문나타네 랭자 마투야지다 덴바레사지 티틴데 마레사지 페질라야 민두와스 가데 다다 신이가 대화 되도 충분라 달라 라바제인 지질 다지 대화 중에서 딜레 텐덴 뭐네라네 내가 투야지 그 말에 들으스는 내가 투야지 미두아스 다 텐데지 유사상다 윤도 당만에 이기 생행데 라신이가 고야지 레샤도 동네 승는 라신이가 고야지 레샤도 텐데지 다 시파로 병면에 레야 다 집지가 임바지 삼노지 고사소나 아니 되는 랑디도 말은 never check senti 아니 내 삼당 거야 민두와스 그 말은 never did that was 텐데 삼바 있나야 텔이야 이 익숙한 신에 아니 베페 아니 서바 공배 유 되게 되게 아니 삼노 신에 삼바야 가데 아니 서바 공배 유 콩도 체베 유치 아니 최선을 매나 아니 서바 공배 용다 매대바지 텐데 인 그sol라 때는 최종 끝나봐 중국 뒤쪽이 아니 랑기 수배냐매 지야지기 다 시대인 차기여 대봐 텐데지 아니 유천신다 찍라 너바 친야 코랑기 아니 뒤찍라 너바 단대들 너바 된대지 중벌을 강해 된대지 중벌을 때 쪼도 강해 진이지 말아봤어 해답에 뒤망보를 봤어 너바 제비 뒤 용화로 봤어 대찬에 아니 네 아니 너바 중세 제비 뒤주 통통지기 교센트 chen 될 나와서는 지금 말아봤어 그래서 강가 유생 안 다르다스 그래서 가 유생 안 다르다스 아니 너바다 팬도 생긴디 아니 예사 아니 너바 제바들 소센체사지 아니 남배shumë 참바고 민주공사에 들어봤어 내가 정해지 매가 있는 참바고 민주공고야 그러면 봤어 근데 sometimes 신진지 연대 고트만의 സമയ 란진지 경 고트만의 സമയ 다 사투들 말을 전주다 근데 래 텔라 하바 람름나 요 준준나 요 도저 섬다야 근데 제가 있나 아니 참바다 민주 공유인도 dur tsaane do mar samtu
במובן מסוים השאלה הזאת היא דומה לשאלה הקודמת. יש בה
With regard to the second question, or the third question here, Rinpoche says, well, there's not much of a difference really to the other question. I mean, it seems very similar to the second question. And Rinpoche says, well, everything he said earlier on these different methods Rinpoche described earlier, well, they also apply here to this question. As we should actually take these methods. We should also apply the same methods in order to deal with such a situation. But what is new as part of this third question is the person saying, well, even though we know phenomena don't exist intrinsically, even though we understand that, or even though we meditate on compassion, etc., well, that may actually not help at all. In fact, this is how Rinpoche understood the question, it will get worse. And so it's important to understand, well, first of all, it doesn't get worse. By meditating on emptiness, by meditating on compassion and love and so forth, well, it's impossible that the situation actually gets worse, that whatever situation we're in, that it gets actually, there's no improvement. But we need to also understand that it is helpful, that it actually helps us. Now, how to understand this? Well, first of all, it's important to reflect on self-centeredness, on the mind that is attached to one's own happiness. We need to reflect on that. So reflect on its disadvantages and reflect on the advantages of cherishing others. This is extensively explained, for instance, in Shantideva's Bodhisattva's Way of Life, or Bodhicayatara. So in the 8th chapter, you'll find extensive explanation on the disadvantages of only cherishing oneself, of self-centeredness, and the advantages of cherishing others. And it's important to reflect on this, to go through these different reasons as they are described here, and check whether it's true or not, whether it's actually the case, whether that's truly the case that self-centeredness harms us, whereas cherishing others benefits us. Does it really make sense or not? So this is important to understand, and then to fully comprehend this, to comprehend these reasonings. So, of course, it's also important to reflect on the other methods Rinpoche prescribed early on, to reflect on these other aspects Rinpoche described as part of the answer to the first question, to the second question. So it may not be helpful to start with the explanation of reflecting on the disadvantages of self-centeredness and so forth. That may not be that effective. But anyway, it's still very helpful to reflect on this, to reflect on the fact that, well, it's also the fact that we've harmed others. We have harmed others, and therefore we experience a lot of problems. And if we harm others, well, this is done out of self-centeredness, and self-centeredness in the end harms us more than anyone else. And without such an attitude, without such a self-centeredness, problems will not arise. Therefore, this aspect we really need to reflect on. And there are so many different ways to do so. There are so many different ways to reflect on the fact that, well, self and others are equally important, and the fact that harming others, if we harm others, then in the end, we will receive this harm will come back to us. So we're all the same, actually, in that we want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. And it says also in the Bodhisattva way of life, it talks about this, that with regard to ourselves and others, well, any kind of harm, since sentient beings are the same in wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer, well, if we harm others, then this will eventually come back to us. And instead of harming others, instead of retaliating when someone has wronged us, well, instead we should practice patience. And in fact, of course, well, actually practicing patience, if we don't practice patience with those who annoy us, with those who harm us, how are we ever going to have the opportunity to practice patience? So if other people actually give us the opportunity to be more resilient, to be more patient with whatever happens in life, whatever situation we find ourselves in. So that's important to consider, the fact that, well, others want to be happy just like ourselves, that they wish to be happy, and also that whatever harm we receive from others, well, without that kind of harm, we wouldn't be able to practice forbearance, to become more patient and so forth. And instead of harming them, we should make an effort to benefit them, but also reflect on the fact that people don't always harm us. It's not that they harm us 100% and that there's no single benefit coming from them. So yeah, there is some harm. There is people do us wrong and behave in a way in which in a way that we don't like. However, we also receive a lot of benefit from others. Others benefit us in many different ways. Therefore, it's important to reflect on all that and not just obsess about, or not just focus on the harm we have received. So this is a way, this is described in texts such as Shantideva's Bodhicayatara, but also in many other texts, it is described. For instance, in the Lamrim texts, or in the texts, the treatises on the way that describe the stages of the path to enlightenment. So in all these texts, you find explanations on that, how to deal with the situation. And so now, as Rinpoche said before, apply these methods, the previous methods that were part of Rinpoche's answer of the second question, apply those methods, but also reflect on the fact that sentient beings do benefit us in many different ways, and they give us the opportunity, as it also says in the Bodhisattva way of life, in the Bodhicayatara, they give us the opportunity to practice patience, to practice forbearance, and so forth. So in that way, we get a better sense how we can deal with such a problem.
Training ya mindu samba tichugo ke tunyo goma chugo chi char rui ayunas ko zo di ke na chobal ten chungwa inza ane rangwa ne chugo tong re sha sa ke ja ti kan de sam tan ke na chobal ten chungwa sa ti shu shu ji no ba chi do as ale ngen la cha sha na pe chi cha sha na dan da lo ba ayat de uma shigebe nala from jumbu sumbala member troop mingutar to be nyomo nisiki nyomo tande kasa mis pena michi chawe na za shukchum shojin nagi yobache ane bet lebatina ya ji troopje chawe na za lebat troopje ane ko jagwa kim soluta jare jagi yob soluta ko bet mingi sumbi fa ne matuge shibuji troop debe kaduji en ko mengana tidu member tigi 콜 콩로사가 말했어. 딱 그 나자데 칸데 전에 자고 그래. 다 사회 나자이나 가인데만 칸데 짜고 그랬어. 뭐 도치그래 마도 지기 디 네바들 콩로사가 말해. 디 난기 다 네바 네시 중에 디 견들 아니 다 셋업 지그래 마도 네바들 콩로사가 멤버 투고 민규다스 아니 tuba sange chumde na da chanju samba tuzo ki choba nyamba chinyen da kongro tsubu chinyen da tuzo la ya ku gyu gi simbu ti marungba chinyen ki nyomon tila kyondo sigiri ma to chi ki ane semjen tila ane tujaris sigi maris o dik esa ti kuju chambu yordas pena soso ranir chashana ranz 이게 chi taba chi se yuliya ane nga nudu dinde chungsu nge nudu chigi tolo shasane susi kyende chiagi jobangi bechati pa mebasu o soso ni kaga soyati duas ha soso dam lei susi kyende da soso ni kaga so duas shenda la tesna ku kyende da kansa tini chig deje ko dugjares lava ma to chigi ku shigyu tigi ene kyenge chat tigi and collaborate somebody tingimidu was or the Ransolay Tamotasha Chitanda Tangi Dravajuma said some of Makoki doing children to some time then the penalty your was and a chick your or the Junju Nala Ubala so good June Chel Prussian then Shadan key baby Nina Shadan Lato then Nina Shadan Latoris and Jawati Shuyundu and middle congress Timona Tanegi, Congo Kawasaki Yabas, and most Nyan Jaware and Jawar Congress Miluas. Till in Koti, Kunyantel in Congress Sagi, saying, Kunyanta what Shadan and Shadan Congress Sagamidosa, to some monetary reportings of Camertas. Or tea, monetary, who give the same good young chatty and Mersun, Telekion to the Kansatil and Yondo Matevich in the Chapel red was. So that then Jung said,
now with regard to the other person, well, the person asking the question, believing that understanding emptiness or reflecting on emptiness, the emptiness of the event and so forth, doesn't benefit or doesn't help, in fact, may actually worsen the situation, well, that is a sign of that person not understanding emptiness fully. In the sense that, well, what is emptiness? What does emptiness refer to? It's not just saying, well, we search for a phenomenon by way of ultimate analysis, we investigate, we analyze the phenomenon and cannot find it. Just that non-findability, just that itself is not sufficient. If you just reflect on that, that is not sufficient. What we also need to reflect on is dependent arising. It's important to take into consideration the fact that all phenomena depend on other phenomena, on other objects, on other things. And that's a very potent idea. This idea of dependent arising is very, very potent. And so, for instance, when someone harms us, when something terrible happens to us and someone harms us, for instance. Well, it says, for instance, Ayadeva says, for instance, in his text, 400 stanzas, he says, just as a physician is not upset with someone who rages because they're sick, they're possessed by a demon, or they're mentally sick. Well, the Buddhas themselves, they do not see the afflictive emotions. They don't see them as an enemy, nor see the afflictive emotions as the enemy, but not the person. They don't consider the person to be the enemy. Don't consider that person to be the problem. And so in the same way, we should understand, just like a doctor who understands when a person is gone mad and they have some mental problems and therefore they fight with others and so forth. So when they're taken to hospital, well, the doctor's not going to get upset with them, but understands rather that they are under the control of this mental disease and they just can't help it. So it's a problem. There's a problem with their brain or whatever is the cause for their behavior. And in that way, it doesn't make sense to get upset with them. It doesn't get because they're controlled by these afflictive emotions. And so in the same way, the Buddhas kind of deal with this in the same way. And anyway, if someone behaves in an inappropriate way, well, we all do that. It's not just other people who behave in such a way, harming others, behaving in a crazed kind of mad way. We also sometimes make mistakes out of anger and so forth. We act in a way that is inappropriate. But we'd like to separate ourselves from our negative actions. There's a sense, oh, that's not me. I made a mistake. That is not me. So we separate ourselves from our mistakes. But somehow when it comes to other people, we don't separate. We see them as the same, as being inseparable. This person is inextricably linked to whatever mistake they've made. Therefore, it's important to consider the fact that they're not one with their faults. Then also, Shantideva talks about, gives an example or presents a certain type of reasoning by way of an example in the Bodhisattva way of life, in the Bodhicayatara. When he talks about when someone hits us with a stick, well, we don't get angry with the stick. We wouldn't get angry with the stick. And the question that arises is, well, why won't we get angry with the stick? So Shantideva asks, why won't we get angry with the stick? And in answer to that, we would say, well, the stick is controlled by the person. So if someone hits us with the stick, we get angry with the person who's in control of the stick. We wouldn't get angry with the stick. And then Shantideva argues, well, then we should actually not get angry with the person either, because the person who harms us, the person who in some way wrongs us, that person is under the control of their afflictive emotions. Therefore, it does not make sense. It does not make sense to get angry with the person, him or herself, but rather become aware of the fact it's their afflictive emotions. They're controlled by their afflictive emotions and they just can't help it. Just as in the case of the stick or in the case of the crazed person or the person who's suffering from some kind of mental disease. So this may help us if we reflect on these different reasonings, for instance, the reasoning with the stick and so forth. If we consider these, it will be helpful. It will help us to kind of deal with the situation, deal with being harmed by someone else and so forth. And that's all based on the idea of dependent arising, that there are causes and conditions, that there are certain aspects that give rise to every situation. And that is so extremely helpful to consider dependent arising, to see the situation from different angles. So in that way, therefore, it's not just emptiness, it's not just the non-findability of phenomena, but it's important to also take into consideration that phenomena are interdependent, that they depend on other factors. That a person who harms us is not the same as the harm that they give out. It's not the same as the afflictive emotions which control their actions.
Our next question is from Alex, who asks, בעברית סליחה, השאלה הבאה היא של אלכס, איך מוצאים את התשוקה? קרצונלה, אנחנו עוד לא שם, אם אתה משתף מסך.
סליחה, אני טעיתי.
מאה אחוז.
אוקיי.
אז
So our next question, the next question is the question, how do we make our lives meaningful and how do we become passionate about making them meaningful? So how do we make our lives meaningful and how do we become passionate about making them meaningful?
Yes, Mindu Javat Riri Ravchidua, Javat Sevuchi Mare. Dulam Kaya Yo Chogre. Singbe Dulam Yo Chogre, Chongbe Dulam Yo Chogre, Lejebe Dulam Yo Chogre, Membe Dulam Yo Chogre, Dulam Daman Mamu Yore. Hari in a manner. Dulam tea, Susugi, Tamudambe Kavlia. Randa, Jizo, Nigalaya, Pando Chambu Yongaji Tola, Damgina, Tindambati, Chinju Sangu Yongala, Ketende Yungurubas, or Tenda Dunamti, Yuba Shisunchigi, when a member Dunam Chigiana, Shingben Dunam Chigiana, Chongben Dunam Chigiana, Tsiriben Dunam Chigiana, Hikaptelia, or Maming Chambuchawo. Samba Tichu Chikajamai. Chidan the Munetame, Randun got Gore, Number Sanje Shungunalia, Randun Sachi Yungar, Randun Chugu, Shendun Sugusine, Kuni Drew Gala, Sanje Yukomba Drew Gala, Randun Chugu, Tunigalo Gore, Sunguya, Randun Zan, Gomare, Sunguyamare, Randun Gore, Red, Rani Chibu Shendakajamai. Kizoki, Kendi Tolia, some. Jachi, but in the age, some not Chumbaina, and Susimize Dinalia, Lochu, Lonishu, Losunju, Loshiju, and Long up to, and so Gango Chabakalia, Yangamabu Chunju Kali, and Dunam Chik Yedevatigi, and Tindechigitone, Nature's all Dindegi, and the Shabjima was shoot song, Yaget Dindema Wotanachi, Kanto Chetu song, Samba, when I saw Jama, Petty Gango shooting. Lotombu Chabakalia, Gawa Gom there, Lol Digit there, what Tindichi Ravas, that did Cheva Yimit Samegi, that's something that Ravas. Cheva Rangi, Nambe Cheva when Dulam said Yevena, Dulam Niris, Nega Duja, Montores, Hadu Duja, Nili Res, or Manzo, Kandar, Nambachi when Sheva, Kawangamachi Shigi Yore. Kawa Dine Shisuna, Jumping Gumare, Sakawa Sanajil, Kaja Yor, Tindu, Kawachima, Sambuji Yoga, Better Tatani Chaguris, get Digba Nungs check, Kawa Mansu, or Landeg Lando, Sushi, love somebody. So, mission that you meet Tagi Yene, Manere, Kandar, Susi, Mene, Lande, Pango Kerbachi, Water, those chatted me, but Java Sambuji, chatty. The catch issue, the Karasna, Yawachimegi, Mundundulam Dubia. Moto, Tandai Maranzo top day or Tichu, Diamindu, Tende Indu, Orve delay, and Protapchi Tala, then Dulam Karchagu Dusana, Yom with Yambo Tewati, and Unito, Tawa Tekonamato Chigi, and Sawan Punji Tap Sham, Nedem, Tende Indu, Tomaniki Tawa Tigi, and that Lanya Saber Chatu, the nature the Shevet Pone, and Tony Tata Gomtes Captain Dulam Chigravas. Or Tony Tawa Gom Tara top to the Tawa top to what you will pay me to us, and round there touching the Midush and then touching me. Today, on the Sanji Yukomatayatella, and Tony Tobe Tawa Tella, Chanju assembly, all that. And Tashi Sumbi Yamnes, and Chanju Sem Yamenti, Mana, you watch him, you got Kora, Yoya Kora Midu, and then you encourage him, Chanju Sem Yamlang Dulam Dugore, 산제주 공화 토야. 내 가르치는 돈이 또 왜냐면 눈을 키고 가르쳐. 묘모 땐도 세베 타바 토발라 돈이 또 따와 메다. 내 가르치는 졸음 상부 디범 뇽스 대화망 졸음 상부 같은 제국어. 제가 지문건도 법국위원 디레스. 근데 인도 현다질 점주시대와 저거 많이 뭐 소소한 게 포함해. 아니 매제체 몬도 두다 근둘람 니리 타르바 탐제 캠버도 두다 근둘람 근데 인사 니중 장선 양답에 따와 랜데 되게 뒷냠내 채고를 세 내가 대투도 봤어.
אז ריפוצ'ה אומר שהשאלה הזאת היא כללית ולכן היא לא...
Now, with regard to this question here, well, I guess the way it was formulated is there the way it was formulated here, it sounded as if in Tibetan, it sounded as if, what should I do with my life? What kind of choice should I make in terms of what kind of a job should I get? And so Rinpoche's response is, well, not really clear what is meant with this question, but actually there's so much you can do. I mean, there's so many choices you have in life. So you could become a farmer, you could become an employee, you could become a doctor, you can become a teacher. There's so many choices you have. There's so many prospects or so many different possibilities. But what is really most beneficial would be any kind of activity that benefits yourself and others, that benefits yourself and society. So that would lead to a positive kind of result. And there are many different professions that you could choose from. You could become a physician, a doctor. You could become a farmer, providing food for others. You could become a merchant, selling things that are important, or you could become a scientist. But what is important is not to not just to have the wish to become famous and be extremely successful and so forth. What is important is to also work for the benefit of others. This doesn't mean you should neglect your own benefit. The Buddhist scriptures are very clear on not just the importance of the benefit of others, but also one's own benefit. In fact, the state of enlightenment, the state of Buddhahood, is described by way of talking about what is called the Dharmakaya, or the truth body, which is for one's own personal benefit, and the form body, or the Rupakaya, as it's called, which is for the benefit of others. So both benefits, one's own welfare, as well as the benefit or the welfare of others, are stressed. Both are important. So don't misunderstand that Buddhism only just talks about the benefit of others. No, it also stresses one's own benefit, one's own well-being. But what is important is that benefiting ourselves should not be exclusive, in that we exclude or we don't consider the benefit of others equally, at least equally important than that of ourselves. So therefore, it's important to not just focus on our own well-being and so forth, but understand we live in society, we live with other people, with other sentient beings, and therefore to do whatever we can to also benefit others. And then when we're 10 years old, and we're 20 years old, and we're 30 years old, and 40 years old, and then when we're 50 years old, so when we look back on life, we may be able to recall, well, when I was younger, I chose a profession, I chose to do something which enabled me to benefit others. It helped me to benefit others, to work for the benefit of others. And that gives us the opportunity to rejoice, to be happy about what we've done. And in that way, it's important to make the right choices at the appropriate time. From a Buddhist point of view, strictly from a Buddhist point of view, well, we talk about a temporary kind of choice in terms of, well, what to do with our lives, and an ultimate kind of an ultimate way to make our life meaningful. So the temporary state, well, from Buddhist point of view, is we of course accept past and future lives. It's not that when we die, everything everything stops, in that our consciousness goes out of existence, but instead we're reborn, we take on another life. And so therefore a temporary kind of way to make our life meaningful would be to work towards a higher state or a good rebirth for our next life. How is this done? Well, by accumulating virtue, by accumulating beneficial actions, and refrain from harmful actions, in the sense that we understand, we base our actions on the law of karma, on the law of karmic causes giving rise to karmic effects, and practice in such a way. So with regard to other people, we don't just do what other people tell us to do, but instead practice according to the law of karma, to prepare ourselves for the next life, to create our next rebirth, which is, well, similar to the one we have right now. Right now, we already have attained a high rebirth as a human being, but to make sure we've got a similar rebirth in our next life, we create the causes and conditions now. So that would be something else to make our life meaningful. But then there's also the ultimate way in which we can make our life meaningful. So for instance, right now we're under the control of our afflictive emotions, and those, well, can only be reduced and eventually eliminated by way of realizing emptiness, which is why we have to overcome afflictive emotions, we have to overcome negative karma, and this can only be done if we realize emptiness. But in terms of working towards our own benefit, but also working towards the benefit of others, the view of emptiness, if we're able to develop, if we're able to cultivate an understanding of emptiness, a view of emptiness, well, that needs to be combined with the mind of enlightenment, with bodhicitta, in the sense that bodhicitta and the mind of and the mind realizing emptiness, they affect each other, they influence each other, because based on bodhicitta, if bodhicitta is influenced by emptiness, and the mind realizing emptiness, and the mind of realizing emptiness influences bodhicitta, affects bodhicitta, then that will lead to the attainment of enlightenment, and that is the ultimate, the final kind of way in which we can make our life meaningful, to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. In the sense that, well, just realizing emptiness is the cause for liberation, to liberate us from suffering. But even greater than that is to work towards becoming enlightened, to work towards becoming enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, which is why, therefore, it's important to initially work towards a high rebirth in the next life, based on our actions of this life, to work towards a positive or a higher rebirth, and continue in such a way that we also work towards liberation and eventually enlightenment. And so it's therefore by working for the benefit of other sentient beings. So it's doing so not just for our own benefit, but also for the benefit of other sentient beings. In that way, we then develop renunciation, the mind of enlightenment, the view of realizing emptiness. This is from a Buddhist point of view, and of course also compassion and great compassion, love, and so forth. Therefore, from a Buddhist point of view, this is how we would make our life meaningful on a temporary level, from the point of view of rebirth in a higher state, and even being liberated from samsara, but also from an ultimate point of view, of working towards the enlightenment of a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings. And so the way we need to go about it, well, this is explained in the scriptures by way of developing renunciation, bodhicitta, the view of emptiness, and so forth. So this is the answer to that question.
Thank you, Rinpoche. השאלה הבאה היא של ליאורה קוף. ביתי שאלה אותי למה להביא ילדים.
Question number 5 is, the other day my daughter asked me why we should have children. So my question is, with the world the way it is there any good reason to have children in this day and age? So with the world the way it is there any good reason to have children? Is it not so? In Tibetan, whatever culture said, is it not better not to have children?
미 지조디 내단 간데 소수 디난데야 냠도 추비지 아마 코나 디난데야 추비체데 미 지조 내단데 간디지레스 디 모시비체데 개좀 쉬워레스 미 지조디 간다 점블리리 디 에네 지문에 타네기 디기 푸손 쳐버 선년디 소투야 누가 예바디 둔도 소투고 말에 소투녀데 미디레데 여러바스 어다 점불링기 지조디 용수 줘봐 또시 직당게 있나야 준비 지조 또시 당 투고 말에 미 지조비 아니 남주고 돈 또시 당 투야 근데 대한 누아스 나 된대지 미 지조디 뭐네 타네기 한도 전부 점불링들이야 샴디 전부 두투야기 누바지야 이래대고 또시 당기 된대기 딱 삽책 내수지 누바야 미지조들 해야 되고 다 딘데지 인데 미지조되기 다 완전 가르쳐 버렸으나 미지조되기 미 창말로기 아니 미 단데 야와신노 남유가 남나 신기 잠불링디 침사 전부 지 아니 디도 저 냠도 용되냐 샤르조 누초를 떼대봐 누초도 샤르조를 떼대봐 보다 장이부터 펜즈 떼대봐 지기지를 떼대봐 합장지기 샤조 합장 초투야 매다 누조 합장 초투야 매다 그 주내주디 신배 토네 김장지기 다 배동원은 다네 내주디 아니 못 쳐봐 근데 지기 더 지조디 아니 단단한 거란 소리 창말로기 배전야야 지야디 당원에 개침부지 임마다스 근데 지기 배전지기 토네 소수 지 뭐냐다네 부지 개바 있나야 디 점불은 지소로 샴디 슈트야지 레마도 디 마르다스 아견지 마르 근데 인도 고야지를 부지 생에도 고야지를 다스 부지에 먹어야지 아마 지를 부지에 먹어야지 아마 신다들 부지 먹어야지 아니 부지 한번 먹어 자선 에 제마 몰라지 칸데 엔지 몰라 저선 엔 차르레스 또 스트레스
Well, in terms of this question here, so, well, it's really not so much about, in general, have to have or not have children. I mean, it's difficult to answer this kind of in general. We have to look at society. We have to recognize what role do humans play in society? What role do they have in this world? So first of all, to bring about real happiness, to bring about great happiness, well, actually, human beings can do this. Human beings can create a certain level of well-being and happiness that, for instance, animals cannot create. Therefore, it's very important to understand the potential that human beings have. So on one hand, there's a lot of positive, there's a lot of benefit human beings can bring can create, or human beings can do a lot of positive actions that they can do that bring great happiness, excellent happiness, even perfect happiness. However, on the other hand, human beings also have the potential to destroy the world. So it goes both ways. They can do a lot of good and they can do a lot of bad. And they have an ability, a capacity that animals, for instance, don't have. Now, something His Holiness the Dalai Lama usually says, something that is really important, is the fact that we are like one family, especially as human beings. We're one human family. So in all directions of this world, no matter where which area you're talking about, which country you're talking about, everyone is dependent on others, is dependent on other human beings, and other countries are dependent on other countries again, on other places in this world. So in other words, we're all dependent on each other, the entire world. This country is dependent on that country and so forth. So in that way, we're all dependent on each other. Our well-being is all dependent on each other. We don't live in a bubble. We don't live to such a degree that the actions of other human beings don't have an effect on us. So it starts with our family. I mean, even with family life, that's where it all starts, that our actions affect our family and so forth, which is why it's really important to make an effort to benefit others. I mean, just based on the fact that we're all dependent on each other, it's so important that we make an effort to work for the benefit of others. Now, if we have a child, even if we just have one child, well, we can raise a child in such a way to benefit others. This is in our own hand to educate the child, to influence the child in such a way that it becomes a constructive member of the human family, which is why, therefore, it's important to have children. We need children. We need healthy, beloved children that can benefit us, because otherwise when we grow old, there's no one left. There are no children. There's no one else. Yes. And that completes Rinpoche's answer. So there's not anything more. Rinpoche says.
Okay, thank you, Rinpoche. השאלה הבאה היא שאלה שלי, באיזה אופן תפילות
And then question number 6 reads, how do prayers and the dedication of merit benefit our family members and close friends after they have died? So how do prayers and the dedication of merit benefit family members and close friends after they have died?
Molang Gawaina, Consochedu, Moa Gawaina, Consola, Tento Kandechi Yungiona. Ani Kesi Tonsane, Shengichedu, Moa Gawaina, Molang Gawaina, Rinpoche, Yamne Karechena Yagares, Moa Yamana Molang Kandechi Yamna.
The question goes on. What is better to, a second part, Venerable Godson added, saying, well, is it better to do prayers or to dedicate merit? What is better?
And Molam Jadaji, ye de Sochi Duas, Chuzan in the Kamelaki in there. Ta Chulu Kelemati told winning it, the Mormon Chulu Samuel Yedich. That Nangbe and then more the Molam tea and then Susu Pama the Punjadan and Chita Roboda to so any dead on Sombatella. Molam Jam, the Pendo Carry or said, Namber in the kitchen to shake Gayundu, or ne young men shut up. Young men long jug Javayo. Young men chug Javayo. Or Tindechi Yavaina, Tumu Mai Davachi Tone, and a Pento Chad. Listen, I'll get it in the Shigi or it. And they do Pamata Puru get a Shavaina, shut up Javayo in Bate. And then Kunja Nam Pinzu Lochi, Tinde Yampena, Sazan Nam Pinzu Lochina, and long jug Javayo Javachi in Bare, Kanda Benjo Yamdo long cheche, or Tinde in Bare. You can't get to or Tinde Tony in Bainane, and the chug Javayo Javachi in Bare. Tinde in do or Pugune, and Shatak Javayo the channel, and Pamechet, and Pamasombo in the Serimbu there, Mola Jaya. And then Pama Tronsawa in Baina, Pamati Gene Sambolaya, and then Gene Telia, G Shenda, and long Juda to Yahuya Tonda, Yava, Yapsum Buya, but those ten, Pendo Chamboya. That Chu Jabetonina, you do when a gigan could shabet there, or Mola Jaya, and a gigan Sheshu Medavachi in Baina, and a gigan tea, Tugu Gomba Karina tea, two sessions of Gubia. What in day on Bolajay. 다 롱주 잡아 요바티 타기 쉬운 나시리 분야다 가르카리나 되게 털이야 아니 지 대선 가리나 뭐라잖아 니바차야 되지 다만은 인지 민지 대승부지 거를 봐서는 근데 말에 타예가 막이 심지다 뭐는 잡나야 편도 된대요 그래서 다 통무 많이 잡아 되게 더네 니바차야 스마트 지기 아니 지가 타예 막이 심지 함자리 너 뭐는 자야지 그래서 다만은 뭐는 저 가르자야 그래서 selaba 있나 자기 계제셔야 돈다 대와 들에 내가 부두자다 다도 부두자니 들에 내가 부두자텔라 걔네 상불래야 걔네 텔이야 상불래 맞장기 핑계면도 걔네 상불 밀룰래마 있나야 암조 온바다 미샤라다 셰바네 메니게 근데도 근데 있는 pensa 말봐 근데 인도 아니 지문에 담는 원부 창와 아니 지 리바세 체르노 롱주 쳐 아니 링이 랑도 야고 신야 어 근데게 지 줘봐 성부 용하지 용화 쇼스니 아니 겨와치만 근데 용화 쇼스 뭐나 자야 아니 대치고 당버려서는 대치고 당그마 간다 타르 뚱는 아니 심지어 탐제 산지 고마터 봤어요 지금 어떤 지금 남바 지금 뭐네 있는 뭐는데 잡아러 왔어 아니 지단 남바 지금 매바 지진 차네 이나는 단대들에 아니 세르와 내매바 롱주쳐 아니 dindichi 용화 쇼스네 아니 질링년제바 남주 만화지 용화 쇼스네 오늘 제가 dindi치래 아니 제가 지금 남주 지금 뭐는 셔베는 아니 산지 고마터 봤다 dindi치러 봐 어떻게 뭐는 내가 지금 자고로 봐 가르스 지시 커버네라 지시 네바 지시도 아니 레냥 샤원제 인친제들 땐도 메타제로 어떤데 인도 딜레 타라지 고도와 뭐는 게다 되네 임바다스 this one
네네 렘버체 쿠라니안디 디 소소 파마야메나 핑게디 촌차네 콘소체두 모랑갸와이나 ngoa갸와이나 콘솔라 칸데치 팽기레스
어디 단장에 별로 벤다 슈차 롱주기 차네 대와 투모 많이 버여봐 샤자기 대와 투모 많이 버여봐 최기 대와 투모 많이 버찬 팽그레스 아니 디데 페센테 지시야바이나 마사니 레가 딜레고 요사베 소스 드리네 dumba케나 사니 디타다 텔리야 팽기도 왔어 사니 딜레젠체티 간다 드링스 미티단 사니 민니부 유지레마도지 드링기 거기지 직차를 들고 왔어. 레드 드링크 소스기 당에 로제마 들이야. 네 달로 아베데 안기 시부지 마사스 달로제마 있는 게 육주에 안기 야부질랜드 버지 배선 치기인다스네 소스 dumba께 다 몰람 소지레 도스 제제인 아니 로제마 슈게 팽기도 왔어. 달리 미디 로제마 미디 마르 왔어. 그 유지 마치 말아. 배tin din나시지기 아니 강사 주 타대바 있나야 통모 많이 먼저 지금 돈에 해야 되는데 루주 먹게자 여러 봤어. 그 가르레스나 킬로미터 사자 킬로미터 동라만 다 사자리야 개발해야 되니 지샤줘라 된 잠리샤줘라 돼 지금 nøb초를 대버지 파마도 부니도 도스 대대 있나야 부들이야 내주 디스 잡는다지 충분히나 하마들이야 당공에 말이야 처음 믹스해 주니는 견사지 당서 부도 가르가리 있나서 또 도가스 때 동무 많이 되게 지금 잡아 이거 들어왔어 근데지 인데 동무 많이 잡아 뒤도는 뭐는지 여기 있느냐 들이야 편도지 요야지 들어왔어
Now, with regard to prayers or kind of aspirations, which can also, it's just another way of translating the word prayer. So whether we talk about prayers or making kind of aspiring towards something, having these kind of aspiring wishes, or whether we dedicate our virtue towards the benefit of others, well, you find this in different religions, especially like prayers, and even those who are not religious, even when it comes to those who do not follow any religion, well, they still kind of have make these aspirations, or may I be able to do this, may I be able to do that, and so forth. So in a way, it's also a kind of prayer. It's this aspirational prayer, wishing for something to become true or to happen. Now, in particular with with the different religions, well, you definitely find all sorts of prayers. Now, when it comes to Buddhism, from a Buddhist point of view, well, how do prayers benefit? Well, they benefit in particular people we're close to, in that our prayers can benefit when people have died, for instance, friends or relatives, our parents. The reason is it benefits because we have this strong connection with them. And there are different types of connections, different types of relations that are described. But there's usually three. So one is a relation of love, which is based on love. One is based on material objects, or objects of enjoyment, if you like, or material objects. And the third is a relation of like a dharmic relation. So you have these three types of relations: dharmic relation, the relation of the dharmic relation, the relation of love, and a relation of material goods or objects of enjoyment. And that is a unique kind of relationship. So for instance, with our parents, the relationship between parents and their children is that of love. It's a loving kind of relationship. That is the connection between parents and their children, which is why it's beneficial to make prayers, or to pray for, well, either one's parents or one's children. Then the relationship, for instance, between, well, sometimes siblings, or in particular of like a couple, like spouses, for instance, oftentimes they share material goods, they go through life together with each other. And so in that way, we can also talk about it being this relationship, being a relationship based on goods, on material objects. And then lastly, of course, the relationship between a teacher or a spiritual teacher and his or her disciples, well, that is a relationship of the Dharma. And again, it's a very special kind of relationship. So for instance, if you pray for the long life of your parents, because of this relationship of love, that may benefit them in this life to have a long life. But even after death, it can benefit if you pray for them to have a good rebirth, to have a long life in their next life and be prosperous and healthy and so forth. All that may have a positive benefit. The same is true for instance, praying for a spouse, or in the case of a teacher, this dharmic kind of relationship, on the basis of such a dharmic relationship, or a relationship from the point of view of spiritual practice. Well, if we pray for the long life of our Lama, for instance, our spiritual teacher, and then when the spiritual teacher passes away, to pray that may their wishes come true, may all their wishes be fulfilled, and so forth. In such a way, because of this relationship, it'll benefit, it'll help. There'll be some benefit, there can be some positive effect. So this is true for all three types of relationships, but actually this should be extended towards all sentient beings. Of course, it's most beneficial when it comes to this unique relationship we have with certain people, but in general, well, it's the best kind of prayer is for the benefit of all sentient beings. So first we start off with a prayer that wishes, for instance, for all sentient beings to have a good rebirth. But of course, just to have a positive rebirth, that in itself is not enough. If, for instance, you have some physical or mental impairment. So therefore, it's important to not just pray for the good rebirth of sentient beings, but also to pray for their health, their mental and physical health, that may they have a long life, may they be educated, may they have enough financial means to stay alive, and so forth. So we pray for all that they may have all that they need to live a happy life. But then that is not enough. We also pray, may all sentient beings become enlightened. May I become enlightened, to be able to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. So all these are prayers for the sake of all sentient beings. So in the sense that as long as we live, we should make these kind of aspirational prayers. We should aspire to benefit other sentient beings in such a way. So this was the first part of Rinpoche's answer. So Rinpoche said, this is all I want to say. And then Venerable Godson asked, but how does it help? How does prayer help? And so Rinpoche said, well, he said, I've answered this because, well, it's because of this uncommon relationship we have, because we have this unique relationship And anyway, actually, if we check, like in our daily life, if we set a certain motivation, if we have a certain aspiration to do something, for instance, to do it the next day, then this aspiration that has arisen today, that arises today. So may I be able to do this? And an aspiration is a kind of a prayer. So may I be able to do such and such. Such a thought, it gives rise to being able to engage in a certain action the next day. Or if, for instance, you take an exam and the result is not very good, and instead of so therefore, because of the result being only mediocre, so then you are determined to have better results in the future. So you have the aspiration to take your exam or to study harder, and in the end to have better results. So all these are kinds of aspirations. These are all therefore prayers. And so in the sense, first of all, the person we are today, when we make a prayer for the future, well, the future person is not going to be us. It's not going to be the same person. It's just the same continue, but it's not the same person. And still it works. If I make a prayer today, it benefits the future person. But it also benefits others. It can also benefit other sentient beings. So because of our connection, because of the connection we have, it can actually benefit others. And we know from experience that sometimes, for instance, because this connection we have, if our parents live thousands of kilometers away, live in a totally different place, and if something with their parents, so if something happens to us, or if there are other parents, like if something happens to their child, sometimes they just know. They may have a dream, or they may have a certain feeling, and they know something is wrong with my child. There's a kind of intuition, if you like, this kind of intuition of knowing something has happened. So all this is because of this unique connection we have with certain people. There's this unique relationship we have with certain people. And it's due to this relationship, it's based on that kind of unique relationship that, in particular, when someone passes away, when someone has died, that we can actually benefit them by way of our prayers, by way of dedicating the merit we accumulated, and so forth. So this actually explains that. But as Rinpoche said, so it shouldn't just be for the benefit of just the people we're close to, but instead it should be done for the benefit of all sentient beings. We should expand this towards the benefit of all sentient beings, kind of temporary benefit of sentient beings, but also the ultimate benefit of sentient beings. But still understand that it is due to our close connection that our prayers done for our parents, the prayers done for instance, spouses or other relatives, siblings, and so forth, as well as spiritual teachers, that all these are, because of this unique relationship we have, that all these are especially beneficial, and therefore it's helpful to act upon that, based on that.
בינינו לבין סוגי האנשים האלה, אלה שהם בני משפחה או חולקים ממון או הורים וילדים, ולכן אפשר לחשוב על זה שאנשים שיש לנו איתם קשר, גם אחרי המוות, אם אנחנו נושאים עבורם תפילות או מקדישים עבורם את פוטנציאל זכות, בזכות הקשר הזה יש תועלת.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer, Rinpoche. שאלה הבאה, שתי השאלות למעשה הבאות הן של ליאור הפי.
Now question number 7 reads, could Rinpoche explain how to meditate on immeasurable joy as part of the 4 immeasurables? What is the difference between immeasurable joy and immeasurable love?
אנא הרחב ביחס למשפט השלישי, ובמה הוא שונה מהותית מהראשון.
So of
the 4 immeasurables, which are love, compassion, joy, or immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. The question is whether Rinpoche could explain immeasurable joy and also explain the difference between immeasurable joy and immeasurable love.
Dewa top deva, dewa ta mendewa, dewa top deva, dewa ta mendewa tela, and gavatseme. Nares in the normal. Oh, and that Tindegi, dewa top devati, and devata da mendewa chigita, chichungo the gavatseme chane, that they do singing the Kanayim do said, Chadang in and Chadang the tenor, and dewa tabayong chidang, and Chadang jina domain good. Tindachi Yungu and Yeri Chadang the Terra, Danyong Las, or those cheme, Danyong cheme, or those in Banasang. That Nyalan Barangum when a Gaja Mebache, Nyamsu Len, Lambabu when a Mebache, Nyamsu Lenje, you same gen to that of the Dunganda. And there was Toro Chanasam. And there were Tobatea, Mendawa. And Tinde Dunga Kanli Jung Beauty and Yeri Chadang and Tedan and Danyong and Netuyati. Or Tindis Gaja in Sares.
Now, Rinpoche's response to the question is, well, first of all, with regard to immeasurable, the four immeasurables, well, the what's called immeasurable love is a type of mind that wishes for sentient beings to be happy. It's the wish for someone to be happy. It's the sense of how wonderful it would be if sentient beings, or if this sentient being is happy. And then the second immeasurable compassion is a type of mind that aspires, or that wishes, well, or thinks, well, how wonderful it would be, may sentient beings be free from suffering, how wonderful it would be if they were free from suffering. And then the third, which is immeasurable joy, is the thought how wonderful it would be if they attained happiness and would not be separate. It will not be without. How wonderful it would be if they were not without happiness. And lastly, the fourth is immeasurable equanimity, which is based on the understanding that, well, the cause for suffering, the cause for the fact that we don't always have happiness, we don't always experience happiness, and are often without happiness, the cause for that are resentment, attachment, and so forth, which is why, as part of the fourth, the immeasurable equanimity, it's the wish, may sentient beings be free from whatever causes them to have suffering and not be free from happiness. So in other words, may they be free from attachment, may they be free from aversion. So in such a way, these are the four. But this is not just applied to oneself, the practitioner, but instead it is applied towards all sentient beings. So other sentient beings, may other sentient beings, as just said, may they be happy, may they not be without happiness, or may they be happy, may they experience happiness, may they not experience suffering, may they be without suffering, and so may they attain happiness and not be separate from happiness, may they not be without happiness. And lastly, whatever is in the way to being happy, which are attachment and aversion, well, the wish, may they be free from, may they be without aversion, may they be free from attachment. So in such a way, you have immeasurable love, you have immeasurable compassion, you have immeasurable joy, and you have immeasurable equanimity. So these are the different factors: wishing for sentient beings to be happy, not wishing for them to have suffering, then wishing for them to attain happiness and never be free from it, or never be without happiness. And of course, lastly, may they be free from whatever is in the way to experiencing the first three. So Rinpoche says that's all he's got to say with regard to these practices, which are directed towards all sentient beings or other sentient beings.
שהם כבר השיגו, ולא הם ישו במצב שבו הם ללא משוא פנים, ללא גישה שרואה בחלק כקרובים לליבנו, בחלק כרחוקים מאיתנו, גישה שמעורבת עם כעס או עם תשוקה. רימפוצ'ה אומר שזה מה שהוא יכול לומר כרגע לגבי התרגול של 4 המידות הגדולות לאין שיעור.
Thank you, Rinpoche. גם השאלה הבאה היא שאלה שנוגעת בטקסטים ומונחים של דרמה. האם תוכל להסביר
Now, the next question, question number 8, is could Rinpoche explain the difference between the 5 primordial wisdoms and how the 5 afflictions are transformed into them, transformed into the 5 primordial wisdoms? So the person is asking Rinpoche to explain the difference between the 5 primordial wisdoms and to explain how the 5 afflictive emotions are transformed into the 5 primordial wisdoms.
Jhado ishe da ishe nga te tende jire ta ko nyomon te kar da tache chane she yong ris bi nyomon ba shedan number ta be tache chane ani chugi ingi ishes chugi ishes ani nyomon ba temu number ta be ani ta ishe chate ani melon ishes ani nyomumba imbada senna mendos senna isbi ndegi ane tima number tabe ane ishe thala nyamni ishes ngajeta senna imbada ngajeta senna tele nyomuni sorchi budo atene nyomumba docha number tabe tache chane sorto ishes ane nyomumba Jhado number tabe tache tatende sirigi the yoneng chati ane Jhado ishes that nyomumba tiki kyon tiki ane Rinpoche ba chima pachati jauma taani taabe ki ta seza rigzam ke dani o tiki ishengali ya tunes chede ya ta nabashar so this ishengal gyur so this sungu yandasam chinan tande tiwadina timado mido amato chigi ane yawaring ngashe bikepa namna rinjung obame toyotupas ane chui ishengu ane tedan 풍부 수주 풍부 남발 답에 ane bike kasa suju 풍부 남시 풍부 남발 답에 bike ba ane temu nambar taji suju 풍부 남다 될 ane 단데티 가리고 남나 ene 마야다 semna timad 파타니 ene 초여 풍부 남발 타와티 린조 풍부가 있는 초여 풍부 남발 린조 난 저차 남발 타니 드시기 풍부 나 풍부가 있는 드시기 풍부 남다 될 ene 오바메 다때는 Jhado 미트마다 ene 자와주의 이시 원도체 딘레기 뒤지기 풍부 남다 될 ene 되주가스 야와린마 이시엔마 아니 용방아 주마장 ene 풍부가 나버타스 딜레지레스.
Now, with regard to the 5 wisdom festival, well, we talk about the wisdom of the sphere of reality, the wisdom of the mirror-like awareness, the wisdom of equality, the wisdom of individual investigation, and the wisdom of accomplishing activities. And these are all associated with the purification or the removal of specific afflictive emotions. Now, for instance, with regard to anger or aversion, Well, the purification of that is associated with the wisdom of the sphere of reality. And ignorance is associated, so the removal or the purification of ignorance is associated with the wisdom of the mirror-like awareness. Then miserliness as well as conceit. So those are it's both afflictive emotions in this case. So conceit as well as miserliness, well, their purification, their removal is associated with the wisdom of equality. And then desire, the removal of desire, purification of desire is associated with the wisdom of individual investigation. And lastly, envy, jealousy, envy, that is associated with the wisdom of accomplishment activities. So these are the 5 wisdoms. And then the related afflictive emotions, that the purification of which is associated with these different wisdoms. And so it's explained that this is usually also explained in the context of what are called the 5 Buddhas. In the sense that usually it's explained that, well, the removal of ignorance based on the wisdom, of anger based on the wisdom of the sphere of reality, that leads then to the purified consciousness and is associated with akshobhya, the Buddha akshobhya. And then with regard to ignorance, well, being purified in relation to the wisdom of the mirror-like awareness, ignorance is purified, and that purified state of the body consciousness of the body aggregate or the form aggregate, that relates to the Buddha Vairocana. And then in terms of the purified state of arrogance, having purified arrogance in relation to the wisdom of equality, that then leads to a purified aggregate of feeling and is associated with Buddha of Ratnasambhava. Then the wisdom, the removal or the purification of desire in relation to the wisdom of individual investigation, that results in pure discrimination, the aggregate of discrimination, in the pure aggregate of discrimination, and relates to the Buddha Amitabha. And then lastly, the removal, the purification of envy in relation to the wisdom of accomplishing activities, well, that results in the purification of the formative aggregate, the aggregate of formational formative aggregate, which in turn is associated with Amoghasiddhi, the Buddha Amoghasiddhi. Therefore, in that way, Rinpoche says these are the 5 primordial wisdoms, and the afflictions, the different afflictions that are associated with them, also in terms of the purified states of the 5 aggregates, and the 5 Buddha families, or the 5 Buddhas.
ההכרה הנשגבת הבאה היא כזאת של מבחינה בפרטניות, שמופיעה או מתהווה מתוך התיאור של השתוקקות. היא קשורה במופע פיזי של בודה אמיתבה.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So we'll move to what will be our probably last question. אז השאלה כנראה האחרונה שלנו להיום.
So the last question will probably be the last question. So what is the difference between Rigpa and Alaya? So Rigpa can also be translated as pure awareness, and Alaya sometimes is translated as like mind basis of will. So is it the same to rest in Alaya as to rest in Rigpa or in pure awareness? Is there a difference between resting in Alaya, that kind of mind basis of will, and pure awareness? Is there a difference between resting between them, and are they the same?
빙에 세우지 랍투야 민두다 다 군신남시에다 일반인의 개발돼서 시에는 직세규면으로 삼아지도 가르르스나 상황난주고 처음에 시에바이나 특별로 이tun다스 특별을 먹고스 특별을 먹고 나네 탐부제보디 로이 tun다이스 아니 다 셈람제 소치레 아니 특별 구바디 조바침보 아디요가디 이실람제 이스 세네 다 특별 오마제보들라야 에네 로 타니지다 조바침보 아디요가들라 리과 타니지다 다 딘데지 타니지다도 와스 다고 고데르 파시 ngare samzu chi thone ta len tak da chhebre ngalap thu me ko der tan sheba ina thande ngaran chogi ene chi sheba rawa chi gonge sheba rawa o tuzula le chol ne gom nyamne gyap shaba da ene tinde gi shiten chen chi tanda chi yue de ba chi tigit samalo lo sa thanye ta gi yo da asum 군신남시 세대 베지 디콩리아 자는 지금에도 디차시 지고 남시 두번 남시 디 공근할 자는 따다 지금에 다 되네 다 군신남시래 다 차로 파지 지 깨져 시에바이나 아니 리바사지 간데 레데지 텐다베기 리바티 가르레스나 상한 삶의 흉내 파 고대로 단지 파시아바이나 되네 군도 다 여주세 때께저 망도 그래 다 간다 나와 깔람바 체바 말람바 냐도 나람바 두서 강가 파팀 차르 제기 셰바 신도 타와 텐다와 tel라 리과세 다니지 딱이 여다성서지도 다 텐다와 디기 아니 유동반이 무슨 제네 텐데지기 아니 셰바신도 타와도 유동반이 텐데기 냠슬렘베기 텐데지들 아니 가서리 연된데 털털로 뭐고 유기르데 저거 첨부 사야지 저거 첨부 다 이실 남제 사야 이실 람드 칭겐기 샘데 텐데지 맨로 성도 텐데지 인사레스 다 페이지를 계속 텐데지 딕송아 다 개체슈지로 셰바신도 타와데 랑싱기 팀에 코에메바지 델레야 안 군도기 경기 레메드지 랑싱기 군도 경기 레메드지 다 대다와 델라 간당 나란 추기 안 루불기 안 셰바라고 해기 차소 녀모디기 안 경기 안 코나리아 랑싱기 코에메나야 루불기 안 지 집데바스나미도 칭데브지 임바체 다 돈이 또베 이시에 당지 탑시니기 람넬 두스르 마신 라발라 테네 차소 녀모는 림베파 차다스 파치임베 깔라 아니 리과신도 사바 단데 신도 타베 텐데 랑싱기 팀에 다데바 텔라 아니 루부 차소 녀몽기 팀에 다 연두 아니 다반인데스 아니 원이 죽고 우스네 텐데지 토야 다 리과 람제 제 고야 유체 리과 람제 마제나 아니 다반인데 고토그 메바 원이 죽고 토그 메 원이 죽고 톱다한테 다 계속 뒤뒤 텐데지 맨로 땅에 이나 디 차승야 서르지 종스 땅마지 예시도 마서
אז השאלה הזאת קודם כל עוסקת
Sure, she says, well, she's not sure he can explain this in a clear kind of way, but the main difference between these two, so I'm just going to call them alaya and rigpa. So alaya here, or well, mind basis of all. So the difference between the two, first of all, well, actually, this is from the point of view of the Nyingma system, which talks of 9 vehicles, if you like, 9 yanas or 9 vehicles. Now, with regard to the lower vehicles. Of those 9, the lower vehicles, well, the mind meditating on what are called the lower vehicles, that would be alaya, this mind basis of all. That is that's the kind of mind that is the basis for the lower kind of vehicles of the 9 vehicles. But then when we look at the highest of these 9 vehicles, the highest is called Ati Yoga or Dzogchen. So the yana or the vehicle of Dzogchen, of Ati Yoga. Well, in this case, the mind that is the basis for that is called Rigpa. Now, therefore, here it's a kind of primordial wisdom, it's a kind of pure wisdom, that kind of Rigpa or pure awareness, as it's also translated. So Rigpa here, the term is applied to that kind of mind, to that kind of very advanced level, or this mind in the continuum of a very advanced person on that 9th level. Now, in general, when we talk about the mind, when we talk about here in this case, well, using the word mind, using the word law in Tibetan or mind, well, this is just a coarse kind of awareness, law or mind or consciousness. That is a coarse type of mind. A coarse type of mind, for instance, that is connected to the sense consciousness, or the sense consciousnesses are included. So the sense consciousnesses, as well as the conceptual minds that arise from the sense consciousnesses in the continuum of an ordinary person, those are all called mind. They're these coarse consciousnesses. They're rough or coarse types of awarenesses or consciousnesses. And then based on those, a person starts to meditate. So they start to meditate based on mind base of all, or as it's called alaya, based on that. And then through advanced practices, and here in particular with regard to tantric practices, what happens is that this coarse type of mind, through the practice of meditation, is slowly absorbed. These coarser levels are absorbed. So we talk about the 80 conceptions, we talk about the mind of white appearance and so forth, red increase, etc. So, or black near attainment. So these type of coarser minds, first of all, the coarsest type of mind while we're usually awake, that is absorbed, but then together with that, the 90 conceptions, so being that coarser kind of mind while we're usually awake, these 80 conceptions, and even these subtler levels of mind, of like white appearance, red increase, and black near attainment, until eventually the subtlest type of mind becomes active. So this is described in Tantra, where through your meditation, you allow for the subtlest type of mind to arise. You activate that subtlest type of mind through meditation, which is also described as the clear light mind. That is Rigpa. That is the type of, or that is Rigpa in the sense it's that pure awareness. Pure awareness, or Rigpa, or clear light mind, in that it is clear and knowing, it's a clear and knowing mind, but it's not affected by any of the obscurations. It's not affected by attachment, by anger, and any of the other afflictive emotions. It's this pure, non-obstructed mind. However, right now, although in itself it is not affected, but it is still, they're not in the nature of this mind. These afflictions are not in the nature of this purest mind, this Rigpa, or as it's called, the clear light mind. Well, the person in whose continuum such a mind exists or is active still has the afflictive emotions, still has obstructions. So they still need to be removed. They still need to be eliminated in order for this Rigpa, pure awareness, or the clear light mind, to remain, and to then give rise to the body of a Buddha, like the nature body of a Buddha, or to give rise to the person, to the person attaining Buddhahood, or attaining the enlightened mind of a Buddha, the enlightened Rigpa of a Buddha, by way of eliminating the obscurations, which this elimination of the obscurations is also described as a quality or a body as a Buddha of a Buddha. It's also described as a kaya. It's described as the Svabhava kaya, or the nature body that is free from any adventitious obscurations. Therefore, in other words, right now, the clear light mind, or the Rigpa, that manifests in the continuum of an ordinary being, or, well, manifests at certain times, but also manifests through meditation in the continuum of someone who's not a Buddha yet. Well, that mind now is purified through meditative practices until it becomes the mind of a Buddha. And then that mind of a Buddha has now attained what's called the nature body, that is the cessation of all adventitious obscurations. So it's attained basically the cessations of all obscurations, and in that way attains the pure body of a Buddha. Oh, sorry, I missed that. I think Rinpoche said, thank you for your questions. I'm sorry, I missed that because I was still talking, but I think Rinpoche is thanking everyone for attending.
Thank you
Yes.
so much, Rinpoche, on behalf of Dharma Friends.
So sorry for that, but yeah, we were just saying thank you for everyone and for your questions.
Deepest gratitude to you for enlightening us with your wonderful and so important teaching. Thank you so much, Rinpoche, and we're really looking forward to receive your teaching in Israel really soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Atullah, can you please do final dedication?
So Rinpoche ngatsu kyus ko gyagin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow. May that which is arisen not diminish, but increase more and more.
Yeah.
Yes.